Well, hello and welcome to the Typical Boro podcast. I thought I was off for my holidays to relax and forget about Middlesbrough Football Club, but we did promise if anything happens in Planet Borough that's worth talking about, we would come back. Well, back we are because the news has broken today that Middlesbrough manager, coach Michael Carrick, has been sacked by Middlesbrough Football Club, removed of his duties along with Graham Carrick, his brother, and Jonathan Woodgate. So to discuss that, I have my ever-present friend, my pal, Mr. Graham Bandira. Didn't expect to see you back so quick, Graham. Welcome.
No, thought I was going to have all summer off, to be honest. I thought Carrick was going to be the man to lead us into next season, but here we are. Busiest
Yeah,
day of the week as well. It's my political cartooning day, so have a word with yourself, Gibson.
dedication, though, Graham. You're here.
Dedication, absolutely. Let's get it done.
Now, listeners to this podcast know that me and you are probably on opposite side of the fences when it comes to what we thought would happen this summer, what we wanted to happen this summer regarding Michael Carrick. Just come to you, Graham, on what was your first thoughts and what was your reaction when the news broke today that Michael Carrick was sacked? Was it a surprise to you, and also were you disappointed?
Well, first and foremost, I was disappointed, quite saddened the way it's happened. I thought it had gone on too long for him to actually be sacked. I thought they were just going to let it ride, and then hopefully the dust will settle and we'll start next season with fresh impetus, fresh optimism. But obviously, they've probably been working behind the scenes. We've been awaiting the outcome of this review. Well, I think today's news tells you exactly what the outcome is. So yeah, I'm pretty disappointed really with the way the club have handled this one. It could have been done a lot quicker and a lot sooner. My gut feeling tells me that somebody has become available suddenly, so they've acted quite quickly. But obviously, we're not privy to any information. We're only surmising what's gone on. But yeah, I'm disappointed. I did want to see Carrick start the season because I do believe that there is a very capable manager there. I'll concede that he's not shown the capabilities to his max, and throughout this season, possibly halfway through the season prior as well. But the season before that, he was a different beast altogether because he had better players playing for him, and he knew how to bed them into a team. I still believe he's got that in his locker. He'll probably go on to bigger and better things. I really believe that. I do think he's a good manager. I think he's been harshly treated, if I'm honest, but it might come out in the wash that I'm completely wrong and he was, pretty poor in the end, but I don't believe that. So yeah, I think it's disappointing, really. I would have stuck with him.
Well, you made an interesting point there, Graham, because I think a lot of fans have alluded to this about Michael Carrick that you know he's a very stubborn manager. He's set in his ways, but
Hmm.
when he had the top players that he had when he first come to the football club in Archer and Ramsey and Chuba Akpom and had a good side, he was very capable manager. He had been playing some of the best football we've seen in the last 30
Yeah,
years at Middlesbrough Football Club. And Michael Carrick's record when he was at Middlesbrough: 136 games, 63 wins, 24 draws, 49 defeats, 46.32 win percentage, 220 goals scored, 177 against. That record stacks up pretty high amongst all the Middlesbrough managers of the past, that win ratio.
mm.
Um, would you say the fact that he's stubborn with his tactics, the fact that he's reluctant to change things up when things aren't going his way, either with substitutions or tactically on the pitch, has been his undoing almost? Because when it's working, it works very well, but when it's not working, he seems to be reluctant to change things up. If we've got an injury crisis, to switch things up. Has that been part of his undoing this season?
I think you could be right there. Yeah, I have questioned his in-game management, and you want him to be reactive before the other manager's reactive. He's never quite smelt danger in games, which has been a concern. I'd also put that down to him being he's still a rookie manager. He's only a couple of 3 year into management, so maybe in 10 years' time he might smell that danger and blow teams out of the water. But for now, I will concede that yeah, he does have his failings, but I also see a lot of positivity in him, and I'm just a little bit disappointed that we might have jumped the gun a little bit too quickly on this one. I definitely would have given him the start of next season with a pre-season, with a better um, relationship, I would say, with the director of football. A bit of unity, get together, work out exactly what we need, get the right caliber of player in terms of skill, technical ability, and also mentality. That's been a big issue for me this season. Weak mentality, whether that stems from the manager, whether that's built within the player, I do not know. I mean, people say it's up to the manager to motivate players. I think a manager can get maybe a couple of extra % from a player, but motivation comes from within. It does for me when I do my job. People don't tell me what to do. I just do it. I think anybody else will feel the same. It comes from within. So I find that a bit strange that he gets hammered for that. But it's just disappointing, really. I just thought we could have gone a little bit better this season, but it hasn't happened. And sometimes you've got to move on. Once the dust settles, it'll quickly be forgotten about, and somebody new will come in, and then it'll be a case of, thanks, Michael, you did a great job in the end, but your services weren't required anymore. But personally, I would have just stuck with him a bit longer.
It was Steve Gibson, though, Graham, putting in a bit of an invidious position in the fact that he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Because I think one point that I thought was quite interesting was Steve Gibson did say he was going to have this review at the end of the season and what went wrong, and everybody was going to be involved and the decision was going to be made. And the longer it went on, me being the cynic that I am, I was just thinking, they're hoping this all just goes away and we can sweep it under the carpet.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And we're just going to go Michael Carrick again and bring a few signings in, and the same will carry on. But Steve Gibson hasn't done that. He's clearly took his time. He's thought about the process. He's obviously spoke with Kieran Scott. He spoke with the coaching staff. Probably had some of the senior players involved, and Neil Bowser obviously as well. And he's come to the decision that rather than go with Michael Carrick like he has done in the past with a Warnock and a Wilder, and then maybe remove them in October if things aren't going well and he's getting a bit of stick off the fans, because Carrick has lost a lot of the fan base. Let's be honest about that. The Middlesbrough fan base is either really flat and tired of Michael Carrick, or they want him out. If Gibson had stuck with Michael Carrick, what would that have achieved with the fan base? Do you think Steve Gibson's looking to think, well, new broom sweep clean, get the fan base back on side, sell more season tickets, try and get that little bit of optimism back into the club? Because I don't know what you think, but at the moment, being a Middlesbrough fan, it's just seemed so flat, since the season sort of descended, the last 6 games, disappointment, into the summer, you're looking, thinking, what's going to happen next season? It looks like we're just going to go Michael Carrick again. There was no buzz, there's no optimism, So do you think Steve Gibson's had a lot of that in his thoughts, making his decision?
I think you made a good point. I think, obviously, season ticket sales are probably slightly down again on last season. Certainly think that'll be the case. So it's probably forced the chairman to act in a way to try and give fans a boost for the next season. Me personally, I'd have been happy with Carrick, but I still wasn't looking forward to next season just because of the personnel we had. I didn't enjoy watching us, particularly. Well, I would say all season, really. The season was a complete abomination for me. It just never went to plan. Obviously, we sold our star striker in January. I think that derailed us, and I think it derailed us at the start of the season when he tried to get away on the last day of the August transfer window. So disappointing in that sense. But yeah, I think the chairman has been forced to act. He's obviously still passionate about the club and he wants to make the right decisions, but it's it falls on his head as well, not just the manager. He's got to make decisions as well, and he's probably made one for the betterment of next season to try and get fans on board. But that'll only be determined by who he brings in, whether or not he goes for a tried and tested manager, the Wilder, the Warnock, the Pulis route, or he goes for again another young rookie who's just starting out and cutting his teeth. That's up to the chairman. Possibly may have met a few, who knows? Again, we're surmising, we don't know anything. So it's a bit strange to actually talk about things that we don't know about. All we can say about what we know is what Carrick did last season, and he's no longer here. So the chairman's made a decision that a lot of fans would have done anyway. Personally, I'd probably say I was in the minority come the end of the season. And I do like to try and back managers. It's a bit disingenuous, really, towards the ethos at the club, where we try to keep managers, we try to get some continuity, and we flipped it again. We're looking at a manager every 2-3 years now, probably even less in some cases. So we've had quite a quick turnaround of managers in the last last 10, 15 years, and none of them have really worked, barring Carrick in that first season, really. Again, I'll go back to, if you have good players, you'll have a good manager, and a good manager can make players slightly better. So I think it's a collective. It's not fair to just scapegoat Carrick and say, yeah, he was useless this season, his coaching staff were useless. I think it is a collective. Hopefully the behind the scenes, the hierarchy, the coaching staff, the director of football, everybody, the players have looked at themselves and thought, could we have done better? We don't know. We don't know what this review consisted of. So again,
I think
it's guesswork.
You're mentioning coaching staff there. I think it's telling the fact that they've announced straight away with Michael Carrick that his brother Graham Carrick and Jonathan Woodgate, who's been in the club a long time, have both been relieved of the duties as well. And there's also, and I stress it's a rumour, that obviously Steve Gibson, I know for a fact of speaking to Steve Gibson how highly he thought of Michael Carrick as a person and a manager. It would have been a tough decision for him to sack him today.
Yeah, understandably, yeah, definitely.
But one of the options that could have been on the table, possibly, and it's a rumour, that Gibson was looking to keep Michael Carrick on but change the coaching staff, and Michael Carrick apparently didn't want to change his coaching staff, and hearing that Graham Carrick was going to leave, Jonathan Woodgate was going to leave, made Michael Carrick's decision, well, I'm going to leave as well. So I don't know if that's coming into the equation as well, that he's been loyal to his coaching staff, if they're going to try a backroom reshuffle.
That's quite possible. Yeah. Again, we don't know, but I'd probably do the same. If your brother was going to get the hook, you'd say, right, okay, I'm coming with you. That's blood. You stick together. Yeah. You stick together as a family, and a coaching staff is a family. That's why Carrick employs him in the first place, because he's got that trust and that bond. And when it works, when it goes well, when you put a string of results together, nobody mentions the coaching staff. Everything's great. Everything ticks along nicely. As soon as things turn, the scapegoats are generally the coaching staff and the manager. It's the players that always come last. But I'm still not convinced by many of our players. I do think we need a massive summer rebuild. So whoever comes in, they're going to have a thankless task, and they're going to have to work with the director of football and crack their heads together and come up with a plan, because we need at least 5 or 6 players to start the first game of the season, in my opinion.
You mentioned about might need a huge rebuild again. However, Kieran Scott said in the past that we've got a structure in place now at the club in terms of the personnel we bring in fit the way Middlesbrough want to play. Even if we change a manager, the manager that comes in will fit the way Middlesbrough want to play with a certain profile.
Yeah.
So do you expect the next Middlesbrough manager to come in playing a similar system to Michael Carrick? Or do you think it's going to be a complete shift change on what, because Middlesbrough have said things in the past and then had a complete rejig again on what they've said and went backwards? So could it be that they're going to rip it up and start again, or would you expect a young coach to come in with similar ideas to Michael Carrick, who isn't going to have to rip everything up straight away?
I think Gibson will have finance in mind, and I don't think he'll want to rip it up this time and have to bring in a whole new backroom team with a completely different plan. And I don't think he'll go down that route. I think we'll bring in a manager who can carry on the good work that Carrick's done and maybe tweak a few things and get a tune out of some of the players without having to bring too many players in. Personally, I still don't trust a lot of the players. I still think we need a summer rebuild. So I think he would probably be looking at bringing in a manager who plays in a similar way. I mean, let's be honest. Michael Carrick has delivered some beautiful football to Middlesbrough. Really, really good football. That first season, some of the stuff we played, it blew me away. I thought I was watching a different team. I'd never seen football like that since we had Juninho, Ravanelli, Emerson linking up as a 3 in that midfield and going forward with the ball. We were brilliant. And that was the catalyst was Chuba Akpom, and then Giles on that left-hand side. There was just telepathy all over the field. It was brilliant to watch, and we've got to thank him for that. So let's not forget the good he has done. It's not all gone sour too quickly. Last season was a joke, and I think there's a number of reasons for that. But back to your question, if we're bringing in a new manager, which we will do, then he's got to bring in somebody who plays a similar way, because that does excite. That's the way to play, whether it's a 4-3-3, a 4-2-3-1, building from the back. Personally, I thought we've got the blend right this season with the goalkeeper situation come the end of the season when we brought Travers in. I thought he knew when to pass, when to kick, when to collect, when to give it simple to your fullbacks or your centre-backs or your pivot. I thought that dynamic worked well, so that was a positive. But we were just weak, mentally weak. We were comfortable giving goals away, and you just saw the lethargy in the team when once we went to goal down or a team got back into it and equalised against us. There was no way we were going to push on and get anything from any of the games. Whether that's the players not good enough, not strong enough, not mentally strong enough, or is that the manager not giving them the right instructions?
You
It's
mentioned
probably a bit of everything, but the reality is Carrick was a fairly capable manager for us, and we would have still been all right next season with a few more additions, and I think we'd have ticked along quite nicely. I'm not saying we pull up any trees, but you're looking at the competition in that league now. The league itself's a joke. You know, what can we compete for now? Sixth, fifth, sixth, fourth, fifth, sixth. That's it. You forget the top three because the teams that are coming down are going to mop them places up comfortably. And then you've got teams coming up, Wrexham, Charlton, Birmingham. They'll be strong. They'll have momentum. Got a few quid behind them. So it's going to be a tough league. People say this league this season was the weakest championship ever, but I disagree. I think it's a strong competitive league every year.
Well, it
I
can't be the
just
weakest
thought we
with two
fell
teams
short.
going up. It can't be the weakest with two teams going up with over. Well, three teams had over 100 points, didn't it, at the end of the season?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it was a hugely competitive league. I would say, apart from the top three teams, maybe the rest of the league was much of a muchness. But in terms of quality at the top, it was probably one of the hardest leagues to win because three teams getting 100 points is a joke, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic, really, for them teams.
You mentioned mentality there before, though, Graham. I was trying to get in there because it's an important point. If Michael Carrick, do you think this let him down in his time? If Michael Carrick was a more charismatic, and I'll use the word even
Yeah,
likable character, do you think he may have survived the Steve Gibson sword today? Because part of the problem I had with Michael Carrick is a fan watching him and listening to him, either pre-match, after the match, his press conferences, the way he handled the press, the way he handled, the radio presenters.
excuse me.
I always thought he come across really poor. I thought he come across dour. He didn't come across like he had any passion in him. And I know it's not true because you don't have the career that Michael Carrick's had and won what he's won without having the passion for the game. But he's just come across, in my opinion, poorly, whether he's been media trained badly or what. He just come across at times when the fans were looking for a little bit of inspiration from the leader when things weren't going right on the pitch, for the manager to come out with a rallying call or even be angry and say this isn't good enough and it'll be better next week, and if it's not better next week there'll be just come out with something. He always seemed to fail and die on his sword with that. Do you think that's been a big influence in the decision as well, and how he's lost the fan base? Because when he first came to the club and the football was good and the whole of the stadium was singing "We've got Michael Carrick," the fans are right behind him. But it's just slowly dismantled over the last sort of 18 months for me, where the fans have been waiting for him to come out and show the passion and the drive and determination to get this club where it needs to be. And for me, he failed on that badly.
Possibly, but I think it's hard to look at a character and get that character to change. You are who you are. Everybody's wired differently. I've called for Carrick a few times just to get angry, kick a few water bottles, just remonstrate a bit, charge up and down the touchline. But it's not in his makeup. His personality, his demeanour is quite languid, quite lackadaisical. He was comfortable in possession with the ball on the field. He didn't really exert himself too much because he played with his brain. He just had to shuffle 10 yards, 5 yards left, 5 yards right, because he made things easy for himself. That's just his demeanour, really, I think. And I think to ask a human being to change their personality is it's not going to work. His personality might suit another team, which I'm sure it will. And he might be able to get a tune from other players who can relate to his personality. Maybe some of the players didn't warm to him, but I'd be pretty confident in saying most, if not all, respected Carrick and gave him the time of day. But I just don't believe that they were very
It's a
good.
good point you make. I'm sure he's very popular with the players, and I'm sure that a lot of the
Yeah.
players will be really really upset that he's left because
So
I'm
it
sure
shouldn't
he's
be
a,
it
you
shouldn't
know
be an issue with fans then, really. If he's popular with the
well,
players, why should fans give a toss?
but because I would argue the fact that yeah, you put your arm around the players and they see you, and on your own, and you speak to them on your own, and the players respect you for who you are and your personality. That's one thing. The fans don't get that. you're the leader of the football club, when things aren't going right, the fans need to see and hear from the manager what's going wrong, how he's going to put it right. But you just come out every week that it's okay, we're not in trouble, we're 4 points up the playoffs, it's not a problem. He just kept going week after week after week, as if he was blinded to the fact that the season was going badly. And the fans wanted to hear the manager say what they're seeing, which was a team that
Yeah,
was going
uh,
wrong, how he was going to put it right. And
that
answering the question, I reckon, I don't know this for a fact, but I think if you're speaking to Craig Johns from the Gazette, or you're speaking to Dom Shaw from the Northern Echo, or Scott Wilson or whoever, I reckon they would probably say they found him very difficult to deal with, because they probably got few lines to write in the newspapers from him that were of any interest. Whether it
again,
was
that's just down to his personality. I know plenty of journalists who've worked with other managers throughout Yorkshire, and every manager's completely different. Some managers are warming to them. They have the plates of biscuits out waiting for them, a cup of tea, give them a rent a quote every single day if they want one. Other managers are quite guarded, and they tend to trust the players more than they trust the press. So again, it's one of them answers. It's subjective, really. You can take out of it what you want. I personally don't think his demeanour and his personality has had any um, adverse effect on his outcome. Really, I think that's just the way he is. Again, when we were winning games, we were looking quite healthy in that first season. That first when he came in halfway through the season, and we shot up the league. No one was saying, "Oh, he's quite dour. His interviews are boring. He doesn't tell you how it is. He protects his players too much." So you can say all that sort of stuff when things go wrong, and try and dig them out. But I don't think that washes really with me. I'm just about who the person is, what he is, what he wants to achieve, what respect he has amongst his peers.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just Michael Carrick's fault. The blame game starts at the top.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
it starts at the top. One person that will be coming under pressure this summer for sure will be Kieran Scott. The recruitment has got to be right this summer. It was poor in January. Kieran's got a little bit of money in the bank with Steve Gibson, I think, because he has got some big, purchases out of Middlesbrough Football Club with the signings he's brought in, the Morgan Rogers and the Latte Lats, who've generated lots of money for the football club. So he's got that in the bank, Kieran Scott. But it's been a bit of a poor time of late for Kieran Scott. So I think this is a big summer for him to produce for the new manager as well, and also above him for Steve Gibson now to show the fans his ambition. It's one thing removing Michael Carrick, but removing Michael Carrick and replacing him with another manager with a similar to lower budget, we're not going to shift very far in the league for the reasons you give. Michael Carrick still a capable coach, and if you
Hmm.
bring in another capable coach in, if you haven't got more funds to progress, are we really going to get much higher than we are now anyway? So I think let's start at the top. Steve Gibson needs to show ambition, push funds down to Kieran Scott, who needs to get it right this summer. And everybody, the players as well who are going to stay at Middlesbrough Football Club, they should take a portion of the blame as well, because we've got some good players at this football club who've disappointed this season. And when the big games come up, when it mattered in the derby games and the games towards the end of the season and the big 6 pointer games, whether you're Finn Azaz, whether you're Tom Conway, whether you're Hayden Hackney, collectively as a squad, they failed as well. So you know, from playing staff right at the top to Steve Gibson, for me, it's a big summer for Middlesbrough Football Club to come
100%.
to come to come back slugging in it. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the pressure is on Kieran Scott. I've always questioned his ability to bring in a defender. I would like this forthcoming season for us to bring in defenders and start building from the back for a change. I think we're okay up front. I think we've got a decent attacking third, um, capable of scoring goals. I think in the end we finished, was it top six? Just squeezed in top six, possibly top five of the top scorers in the division. So that's a good start. So that's something we must look at. I'm sure they've looked at that in the review and thought, well, we can put that one on the back burner because that's not too bad. And, providing we can keep them players. I think Conway will still be here, and Whittaker's got a lot to prove still. As his stats speak for themselves. I know he's been linked with a move away to the Premier League, which doesn't surprise me because I said pretty much every week on the pod last season that big clubs will come and look at him because he's a quality footballer. His technical ability is second to none. and teams will be sniffing for him all summer. So we've got to pin him down quickly and decide whether he's staying or he's going. Because if he is going to go, we need some top dollar for him. If he's not going to go, then we need to commit early and then not have the worry all pre-season of a team coming in last minute and trying to poach him, which is what happened with Latte Laugh. So we can't have any repetition from last season, particularly at the start, because it did derail us. But back to Scott, I'd love to see him bring in some quality, strong, aggressive, horrible defenders. A couple of examples: Rodon at Leeds, yeah, great player. Horrible, yeah, that's what you need. Players like that. We just don't have that ugliness, that fear factor from the opposition. I know we've got Lenihan to come back, but it's a tall order asking him to come back and be that leader. I'm not sure where he's at in terms of his injury, which is still a massive concern. You're asking a lot for him to come back and be that man. So I think we need to be looking at a couple of brutes at the back. Certainly both fullback positions need addressing. We were linked with Mumba at Plymouth, which pleased me because he's had a couple of good games against us, and done a little bit of reading up on him, and his stats are superb. He's a 7-8 out of 10 every single week. He's got pace, he's got agility, he's got desire, he's got hunger, and he wants to succeed. And he'll have a few friends here as well, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem him settling if we do go in for him. And I know you mentioned him as well from that home game. He played ever so well. Yeah. So he's the calibre of player I think we need, because he's hungry. He's got that bit between his teeth. And no disrespect to Plymouth, it would be a step up for the lad. So it'd be nice to try and get him in, and a couple more fullbacks really, because we're criminally weak in them positions. Ayling, we're not sure of what his situation is with his injury, whether or not he can last another full season remains to be seen. Dykesteel's obviously moved on now, so defensively we're all at sea. We're a bit of a shambles, and it needs addressing. The keeper situation, we're relying on Sol Bryn at the moment, who's obviously had a really serious injury, and that could reoccur at any time. So the keeper situation, as you will testify, Dicko, very important part of the pitch. We need to get that. I obviously wanted. I thought we would have had Travers sorted already. Hopefully, we have behind the scenes, but it don't look like it, does it?
No.
Doesn't look like much has happened really behind the scenes in terms of transfers
until we get the new manager in.
Exactly.
So I'm excited about what's going to happen now. To be honest, as a fan, it's ignited me a little bit today. I was one of the fans that was a bit. Absolutely bored with Middlesbrough Football Club. So the fact that big change is going to come in one way or another is excited me again. I've got my mojo back a little bit. So talking about the new manager, I looked at the odds at the moment for the new Middlesbrough post. At the minute, you've got Rob Edwards as favourite, 8-13. Steve Cooper, second favourite, 2-1. Brian Prrisk, third favourite, 3-1. Danny Roll, 6-1. Tom Cleverley, 8-1. Yandal Thomason, 16-1. Then you've got Sean Dyche, Gary O'Neill, Dave Challoner, 20-1. Stephen Gerrard, 20-1 is the list at the moment. Is there any of those names that stand out for you that if you think wouldn't mind a pop at that, or is anybody there you would be happy to take, or have you got somebody else in mind completely that's off the radar?
No, there's a few names there which would potentially excite me. I did mention one when we were mischievously discussing what would happen if Carrick was to leave a few months prior to the end of last season, when it started going really sour, and I mentioned Steve Cooper as a short-term fix if Carrick was to leave last season, and I still stick with him. He would be someone I'd be actively trying to pursue. Contractually, it will suit the chairman as well, because he's free. You don't have to buy him out from anywhere. And I think he's an assured, confident, quite likeable character. I think he would suit the ethos of the club. He's worked with a hell of a lot of players at Nottingham Forest in terms of a director of football. I think he had about 50 or 60 players to choose from, but he saw that as a problem, which was his downfall in the end, and it didn't quite work out. But yeah, I'd be looking at Steve Cooper, another Steve in Gerrard, only in terms of just excitement level, similar to when Robson came in. That could maybe get a few new fans on board as well. He's obviously done done well at Rangers in the past. I thought they were quite quick to fire him at Villa. It wasn't working out, but they could have given him a bit more time. However, in hindsight, they turned that round and they brought in a serial winner in Unai Emery, so that's worked out well for them. But Gerrard would be another one to look at, but it's finances. I'm sure Steve Cooper will fit Steve Gibson's budget more than Steven Gerrard. And the calibre of player Steven Gerrard would. 100%, yeah.
He's the safe pair of hands. He's been there, done it, got the T-shirt. He knows the division. I was sort of thinking from my point of view, what would excite me? Not many of them names there really jump out to me and excite me, except one which I'll mention in a moment, because I was coming from, if we're going to go for a new manager, look what Sunderland done. They went abroad, they found the manager, he's got them in the Premier League. It was a completely, out of the blue, nobody knew who he was, what he was all about. We done the same a while back with Aitor Karanka, which I loved at the time, and got the fans on board, and he got some foreign players in, excited the town.
Who found that manager? That's the question. Who found that manager at Sunderland? We don't know. They must have done due diligence on him and thought, right, he's our man. Because as soon as they got him in, they gave him a war chest, and he spent wisely, and he brought in a lot of young players from the academy. At the moment, I would question our academy. It's not breeding.
No, it's not. That's something that's got to be addressed massively. The academy, Middlesbrough Football Club have got one of the best academies in the country and have done for many a year. And the fact that in the last 3-4 seasons, other than Hayden Hackney, we haven't really had a player come through that's been a first team regular is really poor. But one name on that list that I thought was interesting was Brian Prrisk. So I had a look at Brian Prrisk. I don't know who Brian Prrisk is. I don't know if you knew, Graham. I don't know who he was. No. So he's an ex Denmark international, 24 caps. Had a decent playing career, and he's 48 years of age. He managed Midtjylland in Denmark, where he had a 58% win ratio and won the league in Denmark ahead of Copenhagen, which takes some doing, by the way. He also managed at Royal Antwerp, where he had a 44% win ratio. He went to Sparta Prague, Czech Republic, where he won the league with Sparta Prague in the Czech Republic with 65% win ratio. And then he ended up going to Feyenoord in Holland, where he had an indifferent spell there. He had a 40% win ratio, I think. I'll just double check, actually. What did he have?
Carrick's win ratio was 48% as well. Just saying.
Yeah. So he's had a good career in management. He's done some good things. Might be worth a bit of interest. He's got to be third favourite for a reason. So there must be something in it. Is that a Kieran Scott? Looking at him, I just think it's he had a 51% win ratio at Feyenoord, and also he managed Feyenoord in the Champions League as well, with a few big notable wins, I think against Bayern Munich and stuff. So there's a manager that's won the league in 2 different countries. He's managing 4 different countries.
No, that's no mean feat. That's impressive.
He's managing the Champions League. He's out of work at the moment, so he wouldn't cost a fortune to get him here. He's 48 years of age. That type of player and manager coming in would excite me more than just going on the managerial merry-go-round in this country. So that's one to watch.
Yeah. No, that's you've mentioned a potential candidate there, and a strong candidate, looking at them stats and his achievements. So yeah, you can't rule him out, but it's a risk, because I think Gibson would probably go with tried and tested, if I'm honest, and someone who's been around the Championship a long while. Sunderland took a risk and it paid off. Just because we'd hit that risk, it doesn't necessarily mean it would work. We could be back to square one in 2 years' time again. But yeah, certainly I'll concede that they're good stats. Very good.
So we'll wrap up, Bandy.
What's Mourinho doing these days?
Get old Jose back, yeah. Why not? We'll wrap up, because what we'll do is we'll do another pod, for the listeners when the new manager is announced. We'll come back on. Hopefully we'll get Cuts back on for that as well. He's busy today, but he'll be back. I think he's out celebrating Carrick's being sacked, but you know what he's like. He'll be back after he's finished celebrating.
Can I just mention something? It's a bit of a curveball, but I was listening to one of the pods that Gary Neville does, and they had Sean Dyche on. And I know he's had a lot of stick, and obviously going back to that Chesterfield game and there's not a lot of love lost between Boro and Burnley when we play. And Dyche always got a bit of stick when he was managing Burnley and we had Karanka. But despite his failings and his frailties, he spoke a lot of sense about just making the game simple. I think we can be sometimes a little bit too clever and trying to be too tactical. He sort of simplified it in what he was saying, and that's what he tried to do at Everton. So he took over them when they were a complete and utter mess, and he managed to dig them out the mire. They've had points deductions, and they were still comfortably safe. He knew exactly what he had to do, and he knew what his brief was off the back of his hand. You know, he was in there quickly, turned them round quite quickly. He just didn't quite have the personnel to get goals, and then he sort of put that platform down for Moyes to come in, and then he's took it on another level and managed to get goals out of the players. But my point being, he knew exactly what his job was to come in, galvanise a team which was on its backside really, and it was really struggling, which I think where we are at defensively now. So
Well, he's available.
If he's available, but I wouldn't put him at the top of my list. But if we get desperate, then at least I know we wouldn't be leaking goals every week.
Yeah, we could do worse. Brilliant. Listen, we'll wrap up. We'll be back again to talk Middlesbrough's new manager, whenever that may be, very soon. So keep listening, keep watching. Remember, don't say typical Boro. Watch it, listen to it, and we'll see you soon. Up the Boro.
Up the Boro.
Cheers, Graham.
All right.